I'm going to take a look at conditionals, and this is a simplified form because there are lots of other ways of expressing conditionals. I'll return to those another time. These are simply to do with the verb forms and what you want to express. In actual fact, what we know as conditionals in English grammar should be called hypotheticals. Hypotheticals describe the world in a way other than it is. The if clause in a conditional is called the antecedent because it usually appears at the start. The then clause is the part that's called the conditional, since it is determined by and conditional on the antecedent. Together, the antecedent and conditional form a hypothetical. However, since all the textbooks talk about conditionals, we shall as well. I must say I will continue to use the terms antecedent for the if clause and conditional for the then clause, and then go on to talk about the conditional in total. Very confusing. Even though we normally see the hypothetical as an if-then statement, the order can actually change. The main clause is the then clause, and if it comes second rather than first, then we need a comma to separate it because it is the main clause and it occupies the second part of the sentence. So if it rains, comma, I will get wet. However, if we invert, then we don't need the punctuation. I will get wet if it rains. We can also achieve the same thing by saying if it rains, then I will get wet, in which case we don't need the comma either. There are four conditionals in English, the 0 to the third, and they are defined by the verb tenses used in the antecedent and the conditional. Quite which conditional you use depends on what you want to say. And it really is this simple. In the 0 conditional, we go from the present simple, sometimes the present continuous, into the present simple. The if clause has a present simple, the conditional clause has a present simple. We use them for laws of nature or science, for tautologies like bachelors are unmarried men, and situations which always go together. For example, if I drop a pen, present simple, it falls to the ground, present simple. And because these things always happen together, we can replace the word if with when, or whenever, or each time, or every time, or even used in a non-modal way, should. Should I drop a pen? It falls to the ground. It's an expression rather than being used as a proper modal. The 0 conditional, present simple to present simple. The first conditional, we use the present simple in the antecedent or if clause, and the future simple now in the then clause or the conditional. It's used for those events which have a high degree of truth or probability in outcome, but not logical certainty. For example, if it rains later, present simple, I will get wet, future simple. But it's not logically true. If I don't go out, I won't get wet. If I go out with an umbrella, I won't get wet. And please also note that an adverb placed before the main verb in the conditional clause will modify the probability. If it rains later, I will probably get wet. In the second conditional, in the antecedent clause, we use a past simple. And in the conditional clause, we use a modal. This is when you have no expectation of either the conditional or the antecedent being true. It's used mostly for speculation. Also, as we can see, it's used to give advice. If I were you, I would buy the blue jacket. I'm not you. What we mean is, if I were in your position, I would buy the blue jacket. We can invert this very nicely and say, were I you, I would buy the blue jacket. That inversion makes it more formal. Because of the speculative nature of the second conditional, the word if this time can be replaced by suppose, or supposing, or imagine. The second conditional is mostly used for speculative or daydreaming reasons, and it goes from the past simple in the if clause to a modal in the then clause. The third conditional. The antecedent clause is the past perfect. The conditional clause is a modal. It's also known as the impossible past because that past perfect form describes a situation in the past that you can't change. It's a past reality that cannot possibly be changed. Therefore, the third conditional is most often used to express regret that something in the past had a particular effect in the present, or relief that something bad did not happen. For example, if the fireman had not helped us, we would have died. The reality is that he did and we didn't. So we're expressing relief. There are alternatives. We can invert, as we did with the second conditional, and say, had it not been for the fireman, very elegant, more formal. We can even say, but for the fireman. And there isn't even a verb in that form, but it has the same meaning as an antecedent clause in the third conditional. So, the range of expression. The zero conditional is used to express logical certainty, scientific truth, laws of nature. The first conditional expresses the high probability of outcome. The second conditional expresses mostly speculation, sometimes advice. And the third conditional expresses an impossibility of change, but regret or relief. So depending on what you want to say, you choose the appropriate conditional and the appropriate verb forms in the antecedent and the conditional clauses. All the grammar texts talk about mixed conditionals. Let me explain what they are, because for me, they are only specialized forms of the second and third conditional, and the similarities are more significant than the differences. So a mixed second conditional would look like this. If I were richer, I would have bought you a gift. The if clause is referring to the present, if I were richer now. And the conditional clause, I would have bought you a gift, refers to the past. So because we're mixing present and past, they call it a mixed second conditional. A mixed third conditional looks like this. If I had been born in New York City, I would be there now. Had been born, obviously in the past, would be there now in the present. And because, again, we're mixing past and present, we call it a mixed third conditional. However, for me, it's more significant that they follow the general structure of standard second and third conditionals. In the mixed second, we still have the past simple, were, and we still have a modal, would. In the mixed third conditional, we still have the past perfect, had been born, and we still have a modal in the conditional clause, would. So for me, the similarities are much more significant than the differences. If you wish to call them mixed second and third conditionals, that's your business. I think you've got enough to think about already. that really is it for conditionals. There is a whole swathe of alternative ways of expressing them using fixed expressions. I'll save that for another presentation because this really is all that you need to know about conditionals. Remember the verb tenses in each of the parts. Remember what you want to say. Practice lots and lots, and it really is that simple.